Gentlemen, let us go straight into the economic self-reliance and the gold refinery project in Burkina Faso, which is what Thomas Sankara advocated for in his time. But what has Ibrahim Traoré done today, which is a reflection of what Sankara advocated for in his days? So Thomas Sankara in his time believed that Burkina Faso should control its own resources and avoid the pitfall of foreign dependency. One of his most favorite quotes was, "He who feeds you controls you." And this is a fact. And there is another one that comes to add. And people will always say, "Never you bite the finger that feeds you." So Thomas Sankara was very correct, because if you are fed by another, that same person that provides you food will always control you, and there is nothing you can do about it. So he says, "He who feeds you controls you." It epitomizes the philosophy of economic self-sufficiency. So Sankara pushed for nationalized industries in Burkina Faso to set up local production for basic goods, and implemented the agrarian reforms to reduce dependency on foreign aid. These were his visions, and this is today the visions of Ibrahim Traoré. So, as you can all see, to fast forward it to today's Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré has revived Sankara's ideals with bold move towards resource independence. The construction of Burkina Faso's first gold refinery, a step towards refining its goals domestically, is a direct answer to Sankara's vision of keeping Burkina Faso's wealth in the hands of the people. By suspending small-scale export permits and cracking down on illicit trading, Ibrahim Traoré's aim is to ensure that Burkina Faso's resources benefit its citizens rather than lining or foreign pockets or boosting the economy of foreign countries. People controlling and having gold reserves in their country when they don't have a single gold in their own country. Let us also look at national security and rejection of neo-colonial influence. What was Sankara's position on this? And what is today's Burkina Faso's position on this under Captain Ibrahim Traoré? Let us look at this. Sankara was an outspoken critic of foreign military presence in Africa. And because of this, he was called names, terrorist. He was called a dictator. He was called so many names. And this has always been the trend when it comes to outspoken African leaders. Let me take that again. Sankara was an outspoken critic of foreign military presence in Africa, warning of the dangers of neo-colonialism and calling for African nations to defend themselves. And this is what not just Sankara has been fighting or advocating for in his time, but also the likes of Kwame Nkrumah. He believed that the reliance on foreign troops or base compromises a country's sovereignty. These are facts. Sankara famously expelled French military forces and advocated for African unity against imperialism. So this was his stance in the 80s. Remember, he died in 1987. This is 1987 we are talking about. They saw it decades ago, but it's so unfortunate that even in today's 21st century where we live, the African leaders of today, they still do not see what the leaders of those days they saw in the West. So Ibrahim Traoré today has taken similar steps. He has rejected a long-standing French military presence in Burkina Faso, opting instead to seek more balanced alliance with countries like Russia and Turkey. His decision has inspired neighboring Sahelian countries, with many viewing it as a declaration of self-reliance and resistance to neo-colonial influence. In Traoré's action, we see a continuation of Sankara's vision of an independent and self-sufficient Burkina Faso. And this is where the neighbors of Burkina Faso, like Mali and Niger, they've all come together to form the Sahel Alliance that one of their mandate is to protect their territorial integrity. And if you see, Mali and Niger, they've all ousted French military in their countries. They said they've stayed long enough, their presence did not bring any change, so their absence will not bring any change. Today's episode was going to be juicy. I hope you're having fun and enjoying it the same way I am. Again, let us look at another part of Sankara's and Ibrahim Traoré's policies. So, Pan-African unity and youth empowerment. What are their respective stands on this? Thomas Sankara was just a nationalist. He was a Pan-Africanist. He envisioned a united Africa, free from the division imposed by colonial powers. Sankara advocated for collaboration among African nations, famously calling for a unified African stand against debt repayment to former colonial powers, which he argued were instruments of continual exploitation.
Welcome to the African Leadership Series, where we bring you great inspirational speeches from African leaders. Who in this room does not wish to see our debt simply cancelled? If you don't, you can take the first flight to the World Bank to go and pay to the World Bank. I would like this conference to clearly declare that we cannot pay the debt, not in a rebellious spirit, but just to avoid being assassinated individually. In Burkina Faso, I'm the only one to refuse, and I might not be in the next conference. But on the other hand, with everybody's support, and when we are saying that we should not pay the debt, we are not refusing our responsibilities or not keeping our words. It's just that we don't have the same moral standards as others. Between the rich and the poor, moral standards cannot be the same. The Bible or the Quran cannot serve those who exploit people and those exploited ones in the same way. We should have 2 editions of the Bible and 2 editions of the Quran. Brothers, with everybody's support, we will make peace at home. We will be able to use Africa's full potential, as well as develop our country because our land is rich. We have enough manpower and we have a very large market. From the north to the south, to the east to the west, we have enough brain power to create, or at least go and learn science and technology where it can be learned from. Mr. President, let's present a united front against the debt here in Addis Ababa. Let's make sure that this conference will decide to limit the arms race between poor and weak countries. The clubs and knives that we buy are useless. Let's make sure that the African market belongs to Africans. Let's produce in Africa, manufacture in Africa, and consume in Africa. Let's produce what we need and consume what we produce. Instead of importing goods, Burkina Faso came here to show our locally produced cotton, woven in Burkina Faso, tailored in Burkina Faso, to clothe our own people. I, along with my delegation, am dressed by our tailors, our farmers. Not a single thread comes from Europe or America. I'm not presenting a fashion show here, but simply I would like to say that we must accept to live the African way. It's the only way to live in freedom and with dignity. Thank you, Mr. President. Our homeland or death of
1988 in the 80s. Let's look at what today's Burkina Faso's leader is looking at when it comes to Pan-African unity and youth empowerment. Ibrahim Traoré is not only leading Burkina Faso, but he is also a vocal advocate for Pan-African solidarity. His speeches, often quoting Sankara, call for African unity and self-determination, rallying African youths or young Africans around a shared vision of independence and dignity, are all the same visions of Thomas Sankara and the same spirit to reignite the power of African unity and empowerment of the youth of Africa, especially considering that both leaders were all in their prime. Sankara was in his prime when he was murdered. He was a young African leader, and in the same way, Ibrahim Traoré is a very young African leader, and we hope and pray that nothing will happen to him. So, his message has resonated deeply, especially among African youth who see Traoré as a leader in the mode of Sankara, willing to defy global pressures to achieve sovereignty for his country. Let's move forward. I said today we are going to come back. We will revive the spirit of our forefathers. So social development and building self-reliance. I decided to put it down in different segments so that we can have this comparison and see how Ibrahim Traoré has really been inspired by the policies of Thomas Sankara and how he is doing everything to make sure, but not just this policy of Thomas Sankara, but also in his own lifetime, he has seen what the pain and the agony of the colonial rule in Burkina Faso, especially acting as a military captain in the Burkina Faso military command. So he revived what his predecessor did and putting in and adding to the modern facility to make sure that it meets modern standard of our time. So when we look at social development and building self-reliance, in the days of Thomas Sankara's legacy in Burkina Faso also include his reform in health, education, and infrastructures. He led a vaccination campaign that immunized millions against common diseases, improved literacy rate, and build community infrastructure using local materials and labor. Sankara's focus was on empowering Burkina Faso to rely on themselves and their local resources. So this is what Sankara looked at in his days. What about Ibrahim Traoré of today? In a similar vein, Ibrahim Traoré's administration has directed resources towards healthcare and education. We've all seen this, recognizing that these areas are fundamental for sustainable development. Sankara believed that the growth of a nation will depend on the health and the knowledge of its people. And this is the same thing that Ibrahim Traoré is depending on. He has also, remember, in months ago, he was promoting technical education, promoting the IT sector of his educational system, making sure that not that he undermined any other sector, but he believed that technology was going to improve Burkina Faso's resource economy greatly. So Sankara's focus was on empowering Burkina Faso to rely on themselves and their local resources. And again, Ibrahim Traoré is also recognizing that these areas are very fundamental for the sustainable development of his country. So his government has focused on building local clinics and schools, aiming to make healthcare and education accessible to all citizens of Burkina Faso. Like Sankara, Ibrahim Traoré understands that a nation's strength lies in the health and the knowledge of his people. Okay, moving forward, let us look at what Ibrahim Traoré or at what Thomas Sankara did in the area of championing women's empowerment and what Ibrahim Traoré is doing today in Burkina Faso. We've said it and many have said it before.
High bronze statue now stands at Thomas Sankara Memorial. Years after his assassination, his widow, Ibrahim Traoré, filed a criminal complaint in 1997 over the murder of her husband. But it took 15 years for the Supreme Court to rule that the investigation could continue. However,
okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's continue. Let us look at what Thomas Sankara did in his days when it comes to championing women's empowerment, and what Ibrahim Traoré is doing today in today's Burkina Faso with women empowerment. It has often been said, and it is being said today, that Thomas Sankara was a revolutionary leader in many ways. So in an era where women's rights were often overlooked, Sankara boldly declared that the revolution cannot triumph without the emancipation of women. Yeah, that was Thomas Sankara for you. He said the revolution cannot move forward without, or cannot triumph without the emancipation of women. He implemented policies aimed at improving the status of women in Burkina Faso, including promoting girls' education, banning female genital mutilation, and advocating for equal participation in the workforce with women. Sankara believed that true independence could only be achieved when both men and women were equally empowered.
1984. Au bout d'une année de réformes fondamentales, une révolution culturelle est en marche. Sankara ne laisse pas les Africains indifférents. Il va plus loin et remet en question une société africaine où les hommes ont toujours dominé les femmes.
Ce qui veut dire que nous devons donner à chaque femme un emploi. Nous devons donner à chaque femme le moyen de gagner honnêtement et dignement sa vie.
Il crée une véritable secousse, en étant un des premiers chefs d'État au monde à militer pour l'émancipation de la femme.
Dans les établissements, comment constatons l'émancipation des filles?
Il faudrait qu'ici aussi nous commencions à nous débarrasser de cet art féodal. Ce sont des arts féodales, de l'éducation féodale, qui nous a dit que le garçon est toujours au-dessus de la fille. À l'école même, quand les filles sont en grossesse ou des choses comme ça, on les renvoie, n'est-ce pas? On les exclut. Mais on ne cherche même pas à savoir si le partenaire avec lequel elle a eu la grossesse là ne se trouve pas par hasard dans la classe. Et même s'il s'y trouve, on le laisse lui, le garçon. Donc le garçon peut faire autant d'enfants qu'il veut. Dès la 6e, s'il veut, il commence à faire des enfants jusqu'en terminale. On ne le renverra jamais. Mais la fille, même si elle est à un jour de son bac, elle fait un enfant, allez hop, allez, renvoyer.
Il y a eu vraiment une politique, ou du moins l'intention de faire une politique pour ramener la femme à un être humain dans la société traditionnelle au Burkina Faso, où certaines traditions sont encore très fortes, comme le mariage forcé, l'excision, et le fait que dans le couple, ce soit l'homme qui soit le commandant dans la famille. Toutes ces choses-là ont été remises en cause et il y a des pratiques vraiment rétrogrades qui ont été combattues
C'est à la faveur de la révolution que nous avons constaté des femmes engagées aux côtés des hommes avec l'avènement de la formation militaire, où on a vu des femmes, beaucoup de femmes s'engager. Elles étaient à mesure de faire ce que les hommes pouvaient faire, de manipuler une arme, de marcher au pas, de porter les mêmes tenues que les hommes.
Je crois que c'est le premier chef d'État africain qui a donné des postes aux femmes, autres que ministre de la condition féminine. Il avait nommé ministre du plan, ministre du budget, et des femmes extrêmement compétentes. Il savait les trouver.
À l'occasion de la journée de la femme, le 8 mars, où Thomas a dit que c'est la journée des femmes aujourd'hui, nous allons faire l'exception. Au lieu que c'est la femme qui va tous les jours faire le marché, aujourd'hui, c'est leur journée, elles vont rester à la maison et les hommes iront faire le marché à leur place. On a vu les hommes au marché acheter des tomates, des condiments et tout ce qu'il fallait pour la cuisine du jour. Et c'était bien, c'était bien. Se marrer, bon. Les hommes se plaisaient aussi. Et ils ont pu découvrir, puisque cela a amené certains hommes à connaître les réalités des prix sur le marché.
Les maris qui battent les femmes, les maris qui torturent les femmes, la patrie ou la mort.
So, what is it with Ibrahim Traoré today? So, in a similar vein, Ibrahim Traoré has shown a strong commitment to continuing this legacy. And what has he been doing? So under his leadership and administration, there has been a renewed focus on women's inclusion in government and community development projects. We've seen him in different community development projects promoting women entrepreneurship. Ibrahim Traoré's administration has increased funding for women entrepreneurial programs, supporting individual initiatives to enhance maternal health care and encourage women's active participation in national decision-making processes. Just as Sankara believed in the strength of women as pillars of the revolution, Ibrahim Traoré's view women as central to Burkina Faso's path towards self-reliance and sustainable development. These visions, these two, ladies and gentlemen, so this is how they look at women empowerment, especially Thomas Sankara, in the era where we knew that women were relegated to the back. Women were considered nothing but tools. They were considered nothing but just wives, children-bearing machines and all of that. But Sankara in his government encouraged it, and he said the revolution cannot triumph without the emancipation of women. And this is what Ibrahim Traoré is doing today. So let us look at what these both leaders have in common when it comes to effective communication and mobilizing the masses in their policies. Both Thomas Sankara and Ibrahim Traoré understood or understand the power of communication in driving change and rallying the masses behind a common cause. Yeah, we've heard him when we've listened to many town hall conferences that Ibrahim Traoré held, and he made it very clear the power of the media and what the West used their social media to do, to inculcate negative energy in the minds of Africans, just giving just what they want us to know, and that we have built ourselves in consuming that level of information, such that no matter how much we are trying to eradicate or erase those kind of memories in our minds have already been decolonized and colonized, and we have no control over our minds because of what the media has done. So both Ibrahim Traoré understand the power of communication in driving change and rallying the masses behind the common cause. Sankara, often regarded as a master orator, used his speeches and media presence to galvanize both his fellow Burkinabe and African continent One of his most famous speeches was his address to the United Nations, where he boldly denounced global imperialism, debt, and the exploitation of Africa. And we'll watch that here. Sankara used his platform to speak not just as a leader of Burkina Faso, but as a voice for all Africans oppressed by colonial, neo-colonial systems. His approach was simple yet direct. He didn't just communicate policies, but inspired a sense of unity and self-worth among Africans, particularly in his call for economic and social justice. Traoré, much as Sankara, has been keen on using communication as a tool to solidify his leadership and influence the national and international discourse. And this is a fact. He made his debut in Russia in 2022. Traoré has become a frequent speaker at regional and continental forums, emphasizing the importance of Burkina Faso's independence from colonial powers, as well as advocating for African unity. His communication style is straightforward, often addressing his people through national broadcasts and social media, making his messages of sovereignty and self-reliance accessible to all. An example of Traoré's communication strength came in his response to the French military influence in Burkina Faso. An example of Traoré's communication strength came in his response to the French military influence in Burkina Faso. Traoré did not shy away from making bold statements regarding Burkina Faso's sovereignty, which resonated deeply with the youth and anti-colonial movements across Africa. Like Sankara, he uses these movements to connect with the frustration of his people and the broader African public, calling for a break from the chains of colonial dominance in Africa. His speeches often invoke Sankara's ideals, creating a sense of continuity and purpose in the fight for a free Africa.
On fait tout pour que nous ayons peur. Ils viennent dans nos palais, ils nous menacent directement ou des menaces voilées. Bien sûr, nous répondons comme il le faut. Ils prennent chaque fois des exemples. Ils nous diront, vous savez, Thomas Sankara a essayé de faire comme ça, mais il est où? Il est mort. Le président haïtien, il a essayé de faire comme ça, il est où? Il est mort. Kadhafi a essayé comme ça, il est où? Il est mort. Telle personne n'a rien ici, il est en prison. Tout ça pour essayer de nous faire peur, pour qu'on devienne des lâches. Mais je pense qu'ils n'ont pas compris quelque chose. Quand nous disons la patrie ou la mort, nous vaincrons. Ce n'est pas qu'une phrase, ça a tout son sens. Nous n'avons pas peur et nous n'aurons jamais peur.
So, ladies and gentlemen, both leaders exemplify how powerful communication can serve as a catalyst for revolutionary change, galvanizing the masses and inspiring hope for a brighter African future. This is what these two leaders have been up to. Let us look at the last part that I put together. Let's talk about free movement across Africa and a common currency. So I just want us to know that this talk didn't start today. The dialogue or the discourse about free movement and a common currency in Africa didn't start today with the Sahel or what we've been advocating for. Thomas Sankara was a visionary leader who sought not just the empowerment of his country, but the unification of Africa as a whole. Remember, all this is what Kwame Nkrumah fought and died for. He believed in the removal of colonial borders and the creation of a continent where Africans could move freely, work and trade across national boundaries. That's the same thing. If you've listened to PLO Lumumba, he will ask the question, why do we have up to 34 currencies or 54 currencies in Africa? And yet, none of this currency is a singular medium of trade in Africa. None of this is really recognized as a medium of trade. If you want to buy something in South Africa, they put it in dollars. You want to buy something in Nigeria, they put it in dollars. You want to buy something, it's all a proliferation of. So Sankara was a vocal supporter of the idea that African nations should prioritize internal unity and collaboration, creating open borders and facilitating the free movement of Africa throughout the continent. You know, the content of when I did the research on Thomas Sankara and what Ibrahim Traoré is doing today, it brought me a lot of joy and gingered me to do even more. And I want to pull out those of Kwame Nkrumah and those of the founding fathers of Pan-Africanism so that we can really have the revival of this spirit in our heart and in our spirit and act upon it. And that the leaders of today Africa can really sit down and reflect on the purpose of this, why our people, our forefathers were advocating for African unity. Sankara also advocated for a common African currency, seeing it as a way to reduce Africans' dependence on foreign currencies and financial system. He strongly believed that the economic future of Africa will be secured when the continent established its own economic mechanisms, free from manipulation of Western powers. His vision for a shared common currency and unified economic framework resonates today with those pushing for the African continental free trade area and greater economic cooperation across borders. Traoré, like Sankara, has been advocating for African unity, especially as regional leaders seek solutions to the growing challenges facing the continent. His leadership and policies, such as his economic reforms and rejection of foreign influence, are aligned with the same goals Sankara had. They align with the same goal that Sankara had, an African that is not just independent, but also a united and self-reliant Africa. So conclusively, in today's episode, let us look at how this vision is carrying forward. So in so many ways, Ibrahim Traoré is carrying forward Thomas Sankara's revolutionary dreams. His focus on resource control, rejection of neo-colonialism, emphasis on Pan-African unity, and commitment to social welfare all echo Sankara's ideas. For a new generation of Africans, Traoré's leadership embodies the spirit of Sankara, a spirit of resilience, resistance, and pride for the people of Africa. Yet, as history has shown, leading such a bold change is no easy task. So we must ask ourselves, can Ibrahim Traoré sustain this path without facing the challenges that cut Sankara's legacy short? And can his Pan-African message inspire enough unity to create lasting change across the continent? Let us ask ourselves these questions. Is the revival of Sankara's ideas feasible in today's geopolitical climate? Or is Traoré facing an insurmountable task? What would it take for African leaders to unite under a shared vision for economic and political independence? We want to have your thoughts in the comment section. As Traoré and other leaders rise in popularity, could their approach refine Africa's place on the global stage? These are very pertinent questions that as we go through this video, let's not just be excited about what is happening, but we have to ask ourselves as African youths these tough questions, these provoking questions, and then lead to asking our leaders these same questions. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to hear from you in the comment section. These questions we must ask ourselves. Is the revival of Sankara's ideas feasible in today's geopolitical climate, or is Traoré facing an insurmountable task? What would it take for African leaders to unite under a shared vision for economic and political independence? As Traoré and other leaders rise in popularity, would their approach refine Africa's place on the global stage? And does Africa need it? Let us all ask ourselves those questions. As we ask ourselves these questions, let us also begin to decolonize our mindsets and begin to embrace the Africanness in us. Some deny to be Africans. Some totally choose to die in the Mediterranean or in the Sahara Desert than to be called Africans. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for today's episode, and God bless you. And please do not forget to subscribe, to share, to comment, and also to like. I would really love to hear from you in the comment section. What are your thoughts about these policies, about Thomas Sankara and Ibrahim Traoré? God bless you all. God bless you again.